The Tale of Agneta. It was a dark and pessimistic night. She walked down the halls in fright. Her husband ill and soon to die. All she could do was say goodbye. Although it hurt her deep inside, she knew he'd live a better life. She prayed that a lass would take him in, and in paradise he would descend. But there hadn't been a tragic parting like the one he was embarking. She swept and sobbed, but he was asleep, never to return, never to count sheep. All night she didn't sleep, she heard noises that made her weep. All sounds her husband once made, and now in the house they stayed. As hard as she tried to forget that day, in her memory it would always stay. As if he would once come again, but again, when? She couldn't live without him. She became pale to her skin, and her life was dim. She no longer wanted to sleep, nor did she paint or eat. She was hopeless and felt so very weak. She tried to paint, but nothing came to mind. It was nothing but a mime. Of the artists she disliked, the ones that weren't inspired, those she never minded, she was becoming them. But since when? Her work was always successful. It made her feel happy and full. Without art she felt empty and in need of empathy. One sunnier day she stood by the bay. She looked out into the water and decided she'd paint the water. She still felt blue, so the color would fit her in her sad mood. She hadn't quite recovered, but that was something she covered. Although blue was all she painted, it kept her heart from breaking. Blue, blue, and blue was the only color she'd do. She didn't like the color. It reminded her of her mother, the one who didn't let her be and would never agree. Since the day Agneta painted, not a day she acquainted. She didn't care about her daughter's love for art and did not support her for she did not think it was smart. Her mother didn't believe in art, so Agneta had to part. Not only did her mother not love, she always had to stand above. Agneta, not seeking much attention, did not mind this imperfection. All she could do was think about art and how it filled her heart. But now that she had suffered this attack, she wished her sadness would alack. She tried to go back to get painting life, but she was still a gloomy wife. When she felt inspired to paint, the color blue was her main. As if she was colorblind, it was the only thing on her mind. The yellow bright sun in the sky turned a blue color like the night. The shades weren't all the same, special colors she had made. As the days passed by, she said goodbye. She had made a pact to start again, and paint in color once again. She knew deep down she had to start all over to keep her ground. She walked to the lake where she would paint and follow her dreams without a constraint. Her paintings were extravagant, filled with color and passion while being elegant. The paintings that were dearly missed would come back blissed. She brought back the art life, but left out the wife life. Many knew of her astonishing work, but in look of a job she lurked. She hoped one day the king would see the great work she had complete. She hoped to some day be the artist of the king, yea. She went out and looked for inspiration. She wanted to try and paint again, but it was all inside her brain that she would only paint in color blue. It was the only thing she'd do. But she had to paint in color, too, the most beautiful work she'd do. She set out to the lake for the masterpiece she would make. She got there just in time, for the sun would barely rise. She stood ready to paint when the sun came out like a saint. It was the most beautiful sunset ever, and she had captured it forever. She was amazed. Oh, it was pure grace. She was sure the king would see the talent in ye. She headed to the castle, hoping the royals she'd dazzle. People she saw along the way all stood there looking astonished. She had by far exceeded the expectations. She had made a true creation. When she got to the castle, she was let in a second. Everyone thought she could be next, the artist for royalty and for the best. She felt kind of scared, not knowing what she expected. She walked to the room where the king would have been, but all she found was an empty room. No sign of the king, or so is displayed. The guard with so much pleasure begged her to stay. He knew the king would love the piece, and asked of her the artist to be. After thinking about it, she did agree, and stayed there till arrived he. The king stormed in. He heard about the gorgeous piece. He examined well, but his face did not tell if he liked it or not. Something they would know not. The king looked up. He could not believe his luck. The painting was perfect. He asked her to become his artist. Her gorgeous paintings were displayed. All over the house they stayed. She became one of the most well-known, for her art was all-time known.